Hello, Econ scholars. How we doing? Hey, take a chance here to quick go through our semester exam review sheet that hopefully you have all done or you've been working on so that we've got some of the right stuff. Now, again, not everything on the semester exam is going to be on here, but if you can do the stuff on here and understand the concepts on here, I think you're going to be all set to be successful for the semester exam. In preparation for that, I do encourage you not just to study this or just do this one time and look over it. If this is an exam that you want to be successful on and do well on, I think it's important that you maybe go through this a couple times or make a Quizlet over this stuff, or even go back through all the unit reviews from throughout the year, throughout the semester, and look through those review sheets. I think that can be incredibly helpful for setting yourself up for some success on this semester exam. So first of all, if we look at what it's going to have on it, number one here, a matching section of terms and definitions similar in format to earlier tests. So all those earlier tests we took throughout the semester, they all started out with some sort of matching section. And this does the same thing. And there's a lot of terms on that matching section here. Most of those terms are listed here below. So again, if you know these terms here, you're going to do really, really well in that part of the exam. Then there's some multiple choice questions. Some will be about vocabulary. Others will be about focusing on applying the terms and vocab to different situations like we've done in the past. And, it asks you a situation, and then it gives you some options for what the best choice of something might be. It's 68 combined points for the multiple choice and matching section, so the bubble sheet part of the exam. And then there are some short answer parts to the exam as well. So it'll be a combined 100 points. It's worth 15% of your grade. But again, I think if you go through this and you know this stuff pretty well, you're going to be in great shape when that comes around. Okay, so I guess we can just go through these together to make sure that you've got the right stuff. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. There we go. All right, so we talked about the 4 factors of production way earlier in the semester. Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. The first one, that labor, the human factor of production, that's us, the workers. Then we've got 2, capital. That's anything that can be used to produce more of a good or service, whether that's, let's just say I own a farm and I'm producing food. Well, that's the farm land, that's the tractors I've got, that's the combines I've got, that's maybe the cattle that I have, that's the money that I've got that I can use to produce more of my farming output. Number 3 here, demand, the quantities of a good that consumers, that's us, are willing and able to purchase at various prices during a given period of time. 4, supply, the quantities of a product or service that a firm or a business is willing and able to make available for sale at different prices. Number 5, the equilibrium price. That's the price at which the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. And that's where everything's all good, right? When we want the same amount of stuff that businesses are willing to supply for us. Same thing goes for equilibrium quantity. That's the quantity at which the quantity demanded, so the amount demanded, equals the quantity supplied. 7, a traditional economy. That's an economy in which the major economic questions are based on tradition and what has been done in the past. Profit and economic growth are not a concern in a traditional economy. Number 8, a command economy. That's an economy in which the major economic questions are answered by a central authority, usually the government. Those kind of go along with more totalitarian governments where the government's in charge. They make all the decisions about how much money people make, what businesses are going to produce, how much of it they're going to produce, what they're going to charge, all that stuff. Number 9, then we got a market and mixed economy, an economy in which the major economic questions are decided mostly by individuals in the marketplace. So again, that's based on us. Like when we demand something, well, the prices are going to naturally go up. Or if the supply of something needs to be increased, if the supply is increased, hopefully the prices go down then a little bit. Most countries, like 99% of them around the world, are some sort of mixed economy at least. No one's a pure market. No one's really a pure command economy. But then we've got the traditional economies too, which there aren't really any countries that have those traditional economies, more of like groups like the Amish people that we talked about, more of a traditional economy. Command economy, maybe a little more like a Cuba or a North Korea. But then the rest of the countries around the world are much more mixed. Then we've got bonds. We're getting into investment types. A loan to or from a corporation or government with a term of repayment or interest, where they're buying a bond from us and we're giving them money in return. And we always know that we're going to get some return on that investment because it's been agreed upon when we buy the bond. Okay, insurance, that's coverage by contract for an agreed payment. One party agrees to guarantee another against loss or damage. So loss or damage, if my house burns down, my insurance company is going to give me enough money, or they're going to pay for me to buy a new house or build a new house up to a certain amount of money that I've signed a contract with my insurance company to cover. 12, a stock, another type of investment, right? That's a share of ownership in a corporation. We did the stock market game to practice that a little bit and see how that all operates. Mutual funds, again, another type of investment option, an investment that brings together money from many people and invests in stocks, bonds, or other assets, right? So there's that big pool of money that people all kind of put into, and then the stockbroker or the financial professional, they take all that money and they invest it all over the stock market, and hopefully with a big pool of money then and a large amount of investment, they can make some decent money on that return. Opportunity cost, we talked about that at the beginning of the year. We talked about that a little bit just this past week when we talked about comparative advantage. That's the value of any alternative that you give up when you make a choice. So whatever you give up when you decide to do something, that is your opportunity cost. Scarcity, the basic big question with economics, right? This is what causes us to have to study economics. It's the condition that occurs because people's wants and needs are unlimited, while the resources we needed to produce goods and services to meet these needs are limited. Right? We want stuff. Unfortunately, there's not enough stuff out there for everybody to have. And so things become scarce. And we demand things, prices get changed. Suppliers or businesses decide what they want to make in terms of their resources to try to help meet some of those scarcity issues. The Consumer Price Index, the CPI, that's what we use to measure inflation. That's kind of a calculation that goes in. Some people do some math work. They try to figure out the inflation of lots of different types of products, goods, and services. They do some simple math and they figure out over the course of a period of time what the inflation is. Then we get to inflation. That's the rise in the average level of prices. We want to usually keep inflation at about 2 or 3%. Right now, we said it's pretty fast. It's about 8.5%. In the United States, and that's not what we like. We want to keep prices a little bit lower. 18, unemployment. That's when people are not employed. Remember, that's 16 years of age or older. Those people are calculated into the unemployment. Our labor force is what we called it, and people that are that age or older who are seeking employment. So they actually have to be actively seeking employment. They can't just be sitting on their couch all day, not filling out job applications or looking for jobs. 19, the Federal Reserve. That's the central banking system in the United States. If you remember, that's made up of 12 regional banks. There are those 7 people that are on the board of directors, led by that Mr. Powell, Jerome Powell, right now. They are trying to make economic decisions for us. And they use monetary policy, Federal Reserve monetary policy, Federal Reserve monetary policy. And they've got the 2 ways to do it. Loose money, that's causing the economy to run more rapidly. And they do that by lowering the discount rate so that people are more willing to take out loans, so there's more money out there. Then they will sell open market operations. Excuse me. I gotta change that. They will buy open market operations. Because when they buy them from us, they give us money. And so we can go spend that cash. And lowering the reserve requirements, the amount of money that banks need to keep at the bank, they want to lower that so banks have more money to loan out. Tight money policy is just the opposite. That's causing the economy to slow down by raising the discount rate selling open market operations, so we're buying them from them, we're giving them our money and not spending it at Family Fare or other stores, and then raising the reserve requirement. 22, interest. That's the price paid for the use of money. When someone borrows money, they usually have to pay interest on it, and that's that price that they have to pay, that extra charge. 23, the excise tax. That's a tax on any specific good or services. So like the gas tax, we talked about that being an excise tax, or a state park fee. Like that's a fee or a tax on a specific good, one specific good. 24, tax, a charge imposed by the government on people or property for public purposes. Well, lots of P's there. A charge imposed by the government on people or property for public purposes. We had all sorts of taxes that we have to pay. Federal income tax, state income tax, sales tax, gas tax, property taxes, inheritance taxes, or those gift taxes. Tons of taxes that we have to pay here. 25, then we have an indirect tax. That's a tax that can be shifted, at least in part, to a party other than the one whom the tax was levied. So businesses have a 6% sales tax put on them. So they get charged by the state of Michigan 6% on all their sales. Well, they could pay that themselves, or they can shift that to us, the consumer. So that when we go to the store to buy things, hey, thanks for your purchase, thanks for your money, and by the way, we're going to have you pay that sales tax. So they shift that onto us. That'd be an indirect tax. A direct tax, that's a tax that is directly levied on the party of whom it is to be paid by. So that's like our federal income tax. Can't shift those to anybody else. I get my federal income tax on the income that I make. I have to pay it. 27, a regressive tax. A tax that takes a larger percentage of lower incomes and lower percentage of higher incomes. Again, that'd be like a state park fee, right? People with lesser incomes are paying more of it. A progressive tax. That's a tax that takes a larger percentage of higher incomes and a lower percentage of lower incomes. That'd be more like our federal income tax. People that make more pay a higher percentage of it. Okay, then we get the benefit principle. When a tax is levied on the party that will benefit from where the tax is spent. So take state park fees, gas tax. People that are paying those taxes are benefiting from where that tax money is going to. So the gas taxes in Michigan, they're going to make sure that our roads are good, or that our transportation system in terms of automobiles are good. So when I fill up with gas, I pay that gas tax, and I benefit because I'm driving my car on those roads. The ability to pay principle. That's when a tax is levied at a higher percentage on those that have more resources to pay. They have more of an ability to pay the tax. Again, that's our federal income tax. People with more ability to pay it are going to pay a higher percentage of it. All right, expansionary policy. And I'm going to put in parentheses here. That goes more with our fiscal policy. You got to remember that. I put that in there twice basically now. And that's done by government elected officials. Be like our Congress makes those rules. So causing the economy to run more rapidly by increasing spending and or cutting taxes, increasing government spending. So if we want expansionary policy, our government is going to go out and buy stuff from businesses and put people to work so that the economy gets going, that people have jobs, unemployment goes down. They could also cut our taxes, like literally then giving us more of our money to spend, or allowing us to spend more of our money. Restrictive policies, this is just the opposite. Again, I'm going to add this in there. Policy. There we go. That's the opposite of that expansionary policy. So we're trying to restrict things, slow things down. Okay, a budget deficit. That's the amount by which the government's spending exceeds revenues. So money bringing in each year. So we have a budget deficit if we bring in $4 trillion in taxes and we spend $5 trillion. Well, we went over by $1 trillion. We're now at a deficit of $1 trillion. Our government, federal government, has done that over and over again to the tune of now we said about $30 trillion. We are in debt, which moves us down to the next vocab word there, national debt. The amount of money that the federal government owes. And right now, Not that we need to necessarily know this, but I'll put in there. Trillion. It's a lot of money. A subsidy, that's a payment or financial assistance made by the government to encourage some economic activity. Oftentimes, we use the example of farm subsidies. We need our farmers to succeed and not go under because we need food. And so maybe they'll help subsidize, the government will. They'll help make payments for farm equipment or stuff like that, that maybe the farmers wouldn't be able to afford on their own, so that they can go out and buy the farm equipment they need to run a successful farm and produce for our country. 36, a tariff. That's a tax on an import. Example, we might try to put a tariff on Japanese automobiles so that they would be able to sell, or they'd be encouraged to sell less of the Japanese automobiles in the United States. If we said, hey, Toyota, for every car you're going to sell here in the United States this year, we're going to charge you a 15% tax. Well, Japan's not going to be happy about that. Toyota's not going to be happy about that. They're going to have to charge more for their cars if they want to sell them in the United States to make up for that amount of tax that they have to pay. A quota, that is a limit on the amount of imports or exports that are allowed to come into a country in a year, or be sold outside of a country in a year. Again, if we don't want to put a tariff on something, so if we don't want, like Toyota again, to sell as many cars in the United States, instead of putting a tariff on them, we might put a quota and say, Toyota, you may only sell 1,000 cars in the United States this next coming year. 38, a standard that certain specifications a good or service has to meet. Again, we're not going to allow a Chinese doll manufacturer, we do get a lot of toys from China, to be sold here if it's got razor blades coming out of it, right? That's unsafe. We've got standards that we're going to force products to meet if they're going to be sold here in the United States. 39, dumping. That's selling a product in a foreign country at prices below cost or below domestic prices. So whatever the prices are in that place at home. If we're going to sell soccer balls in Canada, because we've got a bunch left over here in the United States, we might try to dump the rest of our soccer balls there in Canada. And we're going to do our research. We're going to see that in Canada, they sell their soccer balls made by Canadian companies for $40 a soccer ball. Well, we're going to dump our soccer balls there and sell them for $30 a piece so that Canadian people buy our soccer balls and not the ones being sold there. It's great for us. We're getting rid of our extra, but the Canadian soccer ball manufacturers are not going to be happy about that. Okay, comparative advantage. When a country benefits in trade from being more efficient in producing a good or service by having the lower opportunity cost. Remember, we talked a ton about comparative advantage last week. That's the country with the comparative advantage has the lower opportunity cost. The lower opportunity cost. Lower opportunity cost. Absolute advantage. That's when a country can produce more of a product or service with the resources they have available to them. So if we're comparing two countries in terms of their ability to produce a certain product, so, okay, we'll go back to the soccer balls. If Canada's going to make soccer balls and so is the United States, if we can produce 10,000 and they can only produce 5,000, we have the absolute advantage. We might not have the comparative advantage if we're trading two products, but in terms of the soccer balls, we have the absolute advantage because we can produce more of them more efficiently with the resources that we have. Import. That is a good or service that a country buys from another country. It's coming in to the country. And an export is the opposite. Good or service that a country sells to another country. So something that is exiting the country. That's an export. A balance of payments. That's when imports and exports equal each other. That's when they're balanced. That means we're basically paying as much in terms of how much product we have that we're shipping out, that we're shipping in. Protectionism, that's limits on international trade to protect self-interest. So some of those things with protectionism are like, why do we use trade barriers? So why do we have tariffs? Why do we have quotas? Well, oftentimes we set a quota, okay, we want to make sure that American automobile manufacturers are selling cars like people are making, or excuse me, consumers are buying cars from Ford, GM, Chrysler. We'll set quotas on foreign automakers so that they can only sell a certain amount of their cars in the United States, which will then protect them. It encourages consumers in the United States to buy American-made cars. And lastly, free trade. That's trade with no barriers on it, tariffs, quotas. And we talked about there have been some free trade agreements. Like we said, NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, is a free trade agreement that between Mexico, Canada, and ourselves, where we don't put quotas on each other, we don't put tariffs on each other. Okay, then there are going to be some short answer questions that deal with the following. With economic systems, how are the following handled in different economic systems? Well, we got those three economic systems that we studied: a traditional, market, or command. Let's start with traditional. In terms of choice of occupations, like what kind of jobs do people have or what do they get? It's usually like what their parents did or what their family has done in the past. That's usually the type of job that people have. So if your parents were farmers, you're probably going to be a farmer. If someone in your family was a seamstress, well, someone in your family is probably going to be a seamstress. Prices of goods and services, they usually typically stay the same. Sometimes there's more just trade and barter going on in traditional economies. Are profits sought? Like, are people in those types of societies trying to get rich and make money? No. Nope. They're just trying to, I don't know if survive is the right word, but they just want status quo. They're not worried about making money and really advancing economically. Government rules. Well, here the government, in terms of, because it's more of like tribes that do this still, traditional economies or groups of people. Yeah, maybe there's some government control, but not along kind of the community. The government does make some of those decisions, but it's kind of just the community and specific groups or families that make those decisions. In a market economy, the choice of occupations, that's like what we live in, right? Market, I'll even add in there. For the people, that's us. We've got the decision to make to decide what kind of job we wanted. I wanted to be a teacher, so I was able to do that. The government wasn't telling me to go be a teacher. I had the choice. Prices of goods and services, the market determines those prices. So supply and demand drives those prices. Businesses can set prices. Are profits sought? Absolutely. Yeah, businesses, companies, they're out there to make money and advance economically. The government rules. The government has some impact. There are rules that our governments have, but depending on how mixed the government is, maybe it leans a little bit more toward a command economy. So maybe they have some more rules, but they don't like take over. Or maybe they are very much a market economy. The government has very little say in what people do in terms of economic decisions. And lastly, the command economy. That's where the government has control or complete control. Prices of goods and services, that's set by central authorities or the government. Are profits sought? Yeah, maybe the government wants them to seek profits, but not like in a market economy. More of the goal there in a command economy is to make sure that everybody's got a job and everybody's got equal stuff, equal health care, equal education, equal amount of money that they can spend. And then the government rules, yeah, the central authority, which typically is the government, is in complete control. The investment chart here talks about the certain types of investments that you can make that we talked about when we talked about personal budgeting and things like that. And three of the main areas when we wanted to kind of look at what those investments can do was like, what's the average rate of return on that investment? Do you make a lot? Do you make a little? Over like a year, usually you can calculate that. How safe are they? Are they high risk or low risk? Like, could you lose your money really easily, or could you make a lot of money? Or are you pretty sure your money's not going to be taken away from you? And then liquidity, the ease of getting your money out. So with a certificate of deposit, we have there's the key here, right? If it's a plus, it means it's high or good. If it's a minus, it's low or poor. Certificate of deposit, the average return, not great. Okay, it's where, remember, you put your money into a CD at a bank or a financial institution, maybe for 5 years, and you make a little bit on that return, but not a ton. But it is safe, though. Very safe. It's at a bank. You're not going to lose your money. The ease of getting your money out, it's not very easy because you've agreed to let them keep your money for a certain amount of time, whether that's 3 years or 5 years or whatever. You can't get your money out until that date comes up. A simple savings account, which maybe many of you have, The average return, very, very low, 1 to 2%. So not good. But is it safe? Absolutely. It's in a bank. Ease of getting your money out, very easy. You can go to the bank today and ask for your money out of your savings account and get cash in hand today. Stocks, average return can be very, very high depending on how the stock market is doing. The safetiness is not high. Like this past couple of weeks, the stock market's really it's struggled, and so the risk there is that you could lose a lot of your money using stocks. But on the flip side, you might be able to gain a lot of money. Liquidity, it's fairly easy to get your money back out of the stock market. You just got to put your order in, I guess is what we call it, to your stockbroker or online if you got an online stock account. You put your order in to get your money out, and within a couple days, usually you can have your money. Land, very high rate of return usually. Usually land appreciates. It goes up in value over time. The safety of that, though, it's not real safe. You never know what's going to get built near your land, or if a natural disaster happens and you had great farmland, all of a sudden there's a drought, your land is now probably worth much less than when you bought it. So the safety is not great. Liquidity, not great. If you want to sell 30 acres of land, that's a lot of money, first of all. So you got to find somebody that, one, wants land. Two, you got to find someone that has the money to buy it. And then if they do, it's probably gonna be a lot of money. So they got to go through a bank, maybe get a loan. Like that takes a little bit of time, a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever. So to get your money out right away or back from that land is not real quick. Bonds, remember buying bonds from companies or the government. Average rate of return is actually usually pretty good. And you usually have that set, the average rate of return, the interest on that set when you buy the bond or sell the bond. Is it safe? Yeah, usually it's pretty safe buying bonds, especially if it's from the government. You know you're going to get your money back then at some point. It's not very liquid though, because oftentimes bonds you've agreed upon a certain amount of time. Other times you haven't. But again, you got to make sure that someone wants to buy it or that you can find one to buy, and that can take a little bit of time. And lastly, collectibles. The average rate of return, maybe not great. Maybe over a long period of time, if you bought, I don't know if you're buying Corvettes, but not many of us can go out and buy a collection of Corvettes. Things like Beanie Babies. Average rate of return, not great. Maybe right away when they're hot commodities, hot items, people are willing to pay a lot, but over time, usually not very much. Safety, not necessarily a safe investment because you never know. You got to make sure that you buy collectibles that people are going to want in the future if you're hoping to make money on them, and you can't predict that. And liquidity, again, not real liquid. You can't always find somebody. Okay, so say for some reason I did have enough money to have a Corvette collection. Like to get my money back for some Corvettes is going to take a little bit of time. One, I got to find someone that wants to buy them. Two, I got to find someone that has enough money that wants to buy them. Then they have to obtain the money, which most people don't have that cash just sitting around. So they work through a bank, and that can be a time-consuming process. And again, here it says, you'll be asked several questions in which you'll need to select the strength of an investment. You'll be asked several questions in which you'll need to recommend what type of investment might be best to use. All right, determinants of supply and demand. You just got to think about these things, read through them, and how they can be influenced by demand or how they'll influence supply. So those demand determinants, consumers' income, right? If people all of a sudden have more income, people's demand is going to go up because they can buy more things. Attitudes and tastes. If people start to have a better attitude about a certain product because a celebrity endorses it or it shows that it works well, again, people are going to want to buy more of it. Demand is going to go up. And remember, all these situations, the opposite could happen as well. The price of a substitute is definitely a demand determinant. A substitute good, right? If Coke or Pepsi does something with their price, it's obviously going to affect the price of the opposite or whatever can be substituted for it. So if the price of Pepsi goes up, people aren't going to want to buy Pepsi. They're going to want to buy Coke. So the demand for Coke is going to go up. The price of a compliment could affect things. If the price of ketchup goes way up, people aren't going to want to buy ketchup as much. So the demand for ketchup will go down, as will probably the demand for mustard. The price of mustard might not change, but nobody's going to buy mustard because usually you don't buy mustard if you're not buying ketchup. Price expectations, so things that might happen in the future. If we know that the price of gas is going to go up another $2 like in a week, people are going to go buy gas now. The demand right now for gas is going to go up because of what the expectations of the price are going to be. Then lastly, number of consumers. So if all of a sudden we have 300 more students come to Zeeland East High School, the demand for school lunch is going to go way up because we have 300 more people that are going to want lunch. The supply determinants, cost of production. If Vitale's pizza goes, let's see, their cost of if cheese prices, they need cheese to produce pizzas, right? So if the cost of cheese goes way up, they're not going to be able to supply us with as many pizzas because they have to pay more to produce each pizza. So the supply of pizzas would go down. Technology used to produce a product. Usually this increases supply. If we get new technology, we're more efficient with making something, and then we can make more of it. So the supply is probably going to increase. A natural disaster or another event, if there's a big hurricane that rips through, maybe part of the southeast United States, and it just destroys a company that produces, we'll use soccer balls again, soccer balls. They can't produce soccer balls for a while. So the supply of soccer balls is going to go down because of that natural disaster. And then government policies. Maybe all of a sudden the government starts to tax automobile makers less. So automobile makers are able to profit more. Well, that gives them the ability to make more automobiles. So the supply is going to go up because the government policy of taxing went down. Federal Reserve policy. What would the Fed do to stimulate economic growth and reduce unemployment? The Fed would lower the reserve requirement, lower the discount rate, and then they are going to buy open market operations from us, so that we have money in our hands, in our pockets. And they'll do the opposite if they want to reduce inflation and slow down the economy. They're going to raise the reserve requirement, raise the discount rate, and then sell open market operations. Number 5, when we're talking about government services, some of those taxing principles. What are some arguments for and against driver's education being paid for with tax dollars? So everyone would get to do it. Some arguments for, it would allow then everyone could afford a driver's license because no one has to pay money to take driver's education. Like it's basically free. Well, it's not free, people are paying taxes, but it's free for people to take it, so more people are going to do it. Against that, not everyone can or wants to drive. So those people who, like, everybody's paying the tax, yet not everybody's benefiting from it because not everybody's taking driver's education. For example, I'd be paying the tax. I'm not taking driver's education. I already did. And then the opposite arguments would hold true for individuals paying for all the costs. Okay, then with international trade, the last kind of stuff that we've talked about, consider this from both an American and foreign nation, China perspective. How might a change in tariffs impact American trade with China if they are raised? You may think of it from the viewpoint of workers, consumers, or the government in each country. Okay, so if tariffs are raised on Chinese goods, so less Chinese products would be sold than in the United States. So American consumers, we would have to buy more American goods, right? Because there's less Chinese goods available, which would be good for our businesses. Then our businesses are going to be able to make profit. They're going to be able to sell a lot of things. The prices, though, may increase because there'd be less supply of the goods. All those Chinese products wouldn't be sold here anymore, so there'd be less supply. There'd be more scarcity. And so prices may increase. China may also impose stronger tariffs on our American goods so that our businesses wouldn't be able to sell products over in China. Or they'd be able to sell some, just not as many. And our businesses wouldn't be able to profit from that ability to sell goods over in China. Same thing would be, it'd be all the opposite stuff like I put here. So what if tariffs are lowered? How might this impact trade in each nation? Well, it's all this, but just the opposite would happen. All right, so a reminder here, the final exam is 15% of your overall semester grade. Bring a pencil with you to the exam on exam days for the bubble sheet stuff, so you're not trying to erase pen. That doesn't always work real well, as many of you have found out this year, unfortunately. that becomes a mess. Hey, not everything on the exam is on this study guide, but if you know this study guide well, you're going to be just fine taking the final exam. Some other things you can do to study, again, make a Quizlet for these things. Go over this a couple times. Have someone quiz you on this stuff. Go back over all of your review guides from previous tests that we've taken in this class. All that stuff is going to be covered on the exam. And yeah, it's 68 multiple choice or matching questions, 68 bubble questions, and then 32 points worth of short answer stuff dealing with these kind of categories that we just went over. So if you know this stuff well, you're going to do great. And also study smart. Like if this economic stuff is stuff that you know really, really, really well, you probably don't need to spend a ton of time studying for economic exam. Like focus on an exam from another class that you need a little more help with, that you've struggled with maybe a little bit more. Maybe that's economics. Maybe that's the one that you need to be studying more. So if you have questions while you're studying, let me know. Friendly reminder that the exam schedule goes for Wednesday. The first exam is 6th hour, then 5th hour. And then Thursday you come back, and then you go 4th hour, 3rd hour, and then Friday at the last day there, you go 2nd hour, 1st hour. As a reminder, the last test that we took over fiscal policy, you'll be able to do test corrections on that after you take your final exam. That's the time that will be there for that. Many of you should have some time to complete those if you would like to do those. All right, again, if you got more questions, please reach out, find me, ask me, email me, and we'll try to answer the questions that you might have in going into exams. Good luck on all your exams this week. Good luck on this one. You guys be just fine. And we'll keep studying in class too as well.